Today on Locked On Canadiens, it is the Friday mailbag. Let's talk about whether the Habs should sign someone to a PTO. Who would you put in a Montreal Canadiens own Hall of Fame? And lots more coming right up.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. My name is Laura Saab, also known as the Active Stick, and today I'm not joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host Ian Boisvert, who is away. But he will be back for next week's episodes. We will be posting on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. We are almost back to our 4 days a week schedule. It's getting really, really close. But in the meantime, next week, because of the Labor Day holiday, and also because we have a strong suspicion that there might be some movement on that Carey Price contract, we will be posting on Tuesday instead of Monday. Everybody enjoy a lovely long weekend. Hopefully you all get to celebrate one. All right, today is a Friday mailbag. I have a lot of mail that I want to get through, but I do have to start by, I guess, saying sorry, a mea culpa. I got it wrong. I said the San Jose Sharks had not reached the cap floor, and they had. It was just my outdated research. It was just a complete mistake on my part when I was talking about the Carey Price contract, so I do apologize for that, and I was wrong. I just was not looking at the right thing when I was getting ready for that episode. All right, let's get right into our mailbag questions. First of all, we did have a really good question about players that we would like to keep if we could keep them at their age. So if we could add a former player to this roster at the age they were when they were with the Montreal Canadiens. I did not want to do that particular question without Ian because there's a lot of good meat there. So we are going to make a segment out of it in one of our next week's episodes. And that was a YouTube question. So look out for that episode. So getting into the email questions, I'm going to start with Curtis W. My Friday question is, who would you say is the Canadiens' all-time best cup-winning coach? Scotty Bowman, Pat Burns, or Jacques Demers? So Pat Burns did not actually win a cup with the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know, like the question wasn't super clear. He won one cup with the New Jersey Devils. But emotionally, I think he's my favorite. Also because I was around to see his work, right? Scotty Bowman is objectively, I think, the best coach the Montreal Canadiens have ever had. And then Jacques Demers, I think he has a special place in our heart for carrying a team that was not supposed to, but eventually did, to the Stanley Cup. Obviously, with his health deteriorating and everything, like it's a very, very emotional connection that we have with him. It is obviously the last cup the Montreal Canadiens won. So that's the answer for Curtis. And then we have our good friend of the show, Randy Hansen, asking a couple questions. Since it's now officially PTO season, do you think the Habs will sign anyone to a PTO for this training camp? I think that they will not. And the reason that I think they will not is even though we have been waiting for them to do a blockbuster late summer trade, they seem to want to stand pat with what they have, which means that they probably are looking at giving some of the Rocket, some of the prospects, an opportunity. And there's no better time to do that than during training camp. The question that I have for the Habs is, in the case that they see that these players are not ideal or they're lacking in something and they need to, go back to Laval and grow a little bit more, what happens to the holes in the roster? Because there are still holes in the roster, right? And putting aside the whole number 2C question right now, we think that they're going to give Kirby Dach the opportunity while also looking out there at the market to see what's available or what they can pull off. The Canadiens don't have a third line center either. The Canadiens also are missing a bunch of penalty killers. So I know that they did make some changes in the offseason. I know that they brought in some guys we're really excited about. And I don't want to say that I'm not, right? I just want to, I think that this is the route that they're going to go. And that's just a hunch that I have. But it would be really funny if they do sign someone to a PTO. And then I'll be completely wrong. And it'll be really funny if they do it on Friday morning at 8 o'clock, which is what Ken Hughes really loves to do. And the next question from Randy. Who do you see as the new shot blocking leader for the Habs now that Savvy has retired? I think it's going to have to be Jaden Struble. I think that's going to be his role, and I think that's going to be the way that he distinguishes himself and stays on the team. I'm not just saying that because he's a defensive shutdown defenseman. I think it's just going to have to be that guy because I cannot picture watching the other guys play. I cannot picture that being their role. You know what I mean? Like your Mike Matheson, your Caden Gooley. Although Caden Gooley might be the shot blocking leader in the playoffs, I feel like that's the kind of thing that he will do. I just find that they're much more offensively minded, and I think shot blocking is going to be the way that Jaden Struble is going to be able um, to distinguish himself, and also just it's going to be really funny watching pucks bounce off of him. He's just in such amazing shape. I think it's going to be really funny. And then the next question from Randy is: do you see any changes in the on ice leadership, or will this group still identify with the same players? I think that's a really cool question because they brought in a guy that was a big name, Noah Dobson, right? He was a big name on the market, and they brought in a guy who's going to scrape his way into the NHL lineup in Blais, and I think you've also got Boljic, and I actually think that if they do change anything up with the leadership, it will be because one of the people in Laval made their way onto the team and eventually over the course of the season proved themselves, and that guy is Owen Beck. I feel like Owen Beck has leadership qualities. I feel like if he does make this roster, he's going to really have a really amazing season, a breakout year on the Montreal Canadiens, and the changes won't happen up front, right? Like we're not going to get like in the golfing in the golf tournament, which if anyone knows what it is, please let us know. They're very cagey about it, and there's absolutely no news, and I'm just dying to know because that's when for me the season starts. Anyways, so I don't think we're going to see any big changes like that. Also, there's a possibility that Mike Matheson gets traded. There's a chance for somebody else to step up. And I'm not just saying, wearing A's on your jersey. I'm talking about like the leadership group of this team. I think it's going to be really interesting to see a young guy kind of grab that the opportunity by the horns. I want to thank Randy, good friend of the show, for his questions. He's always given us a lot to talk about and a lot of things to think about. I have a couple of questions that are going to need a little bit more time, but I do want to get to one from our good friend, Charles W., who is a longtime listener of the show and has always been really, really helpful with mailbag questions, but also just, engaged with our content. And we really, really appreciate you, Charles W. Happy Thursday. So I got this email yesterday, obviously. We all know what our top prospects are doing while developing. Michael Hage, for example, he's at school and working out while playing NCAA games. But what is going on off ice for some of the European prospects? Vincenz Rohr and Alex Jarofsky, for example. Do we know what they are doing when not at the rink? I realize this is a Google search type of question, but it's kind of an unknown where the prospects aren't under a microscope like the North American-based prospects are. So we do have the advantage of not just necessarily needing to Google search. There are a couple of people in the Montreal community that are dialed in to some of these things and do have some connections. So we can ask them and we can reach out and let you know. My first one is for Vincenz Rohr. Like I would say probably Patrick Bexell of Habs Eyes on the Prize is your best source because he got the chance to speak to not just people around him, but the national coach of the I said national coach. I meant the head coach of the national team of Austria. And I almost said Australia there too. So anyway, so Patrick Bexell is very dialed into the European prospects and is able to get to know a lot of people around them, right? Coaches, staff, front office staff. Um, he's my go-to. So we will ask him what he knows about that. As for any Russian prospects, I think Marco D'Amico has a lot of sources. Obviously, he has a lot of Ivan Demidov sources. He has a lot of Russian hockey and KHL sources. But another person that I would ask would be Hadi Karakesh of I think it's Elite Prospects now, formerly of Locked On Prospects. He's definitely somebody that I would check in with to find out what's going on across the pond / in the KHL. So those are my two go-to sources. I will ask those questions, I'll find out, and report back so we can get to know some of the prospects. All right, we are flying through this mailbag today. So let me maybe go to a really, really thought provoking question from Ted C about a Habs Hall of Fame. And that's coming up next here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet player props, building a same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. I love that because it is NFL fantasy season. Everybody's talking about their rosters. I have to be honest, I'm not a fantasy player. I usually just bet on FanDuel. And it's a quick, easy, and it's the best way really to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting fanduel.com to get started. That's fanduel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, we have a favor to ask you of our listeners. It's an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. And it is really important to make your voice heard. We do make changes and improve our content based on your feelings. So it's really, really, really important to get it out there. All right, let's talk about this question from Ted C, which I thought was really interesting. The Pittsburgh Penguins recently announced that they're going to have their own Hall of Fame built into the PPG Paints Arena and will be honoring players who will be having their numbers retired and other players who won't ever have their numbers retired. For example, Jaromir Jagr, number retired. Joe Mullen won't ever have their numbers retired. Each player being honored, however, played an integral part to their franchise and deserves to be celebrated by their fan base. The Montreal Canadiens, being the most storied franchise in NHL history, have several great players who won't have their numbers retired, because if we retire them, we're going to have to start using decimal signs for our numbers. Agreed, Ted. For example, I'm a fan of going back to the 1989 season, which is the first year I started to follow the game really, and number 11 has always belonged to my favorite player at the time. So, Ryan Walter, Kirk Muller, Saku Koivu, Brendan Gallagher. Number 27 won't be retired because great players like Matthew Schneider, Pete Mahovlich, Alexei Kovalev, and he's put Jonathan Drouin. But these players do need to be celebrated by the franchise. Who are your inaugural nominees after Koivu? So, the Montreal Canadiens actually did have something like that. In their centennial season, they built a Montreal Canadiens Hall of Fame in the lower level of the Bell Center. And you could see it for free if you were there for a game or if you were there for a tour. And it had like a replica of the Habs locker room, the historic Habs locker room, kind of the same one that's in the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. They had some artifacts that were donated or lent by people. It was really interesting, but then they closed it in 2015. I think it ran its course after 15 years. And then, they obviously built those Canadiens Tower condos around the Bell Center. So it went away. But if they were to do something like the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think Saku Koivu has to be the first person. I agree with you. There are going to be people that will not get in. And I know the Jonathan Drouin one was a joke. But there's definitely people that I don't think will be considered. But I did like the Kirk Muller and Brendan Gallagher one. And if you're going on that train, I don't think the Montreal Canadiens are ever going to retire Saku's number, which obviously breaks my heart. But I do think they will honor him for always. But if they are going to retire, the next number that they could possibly retire will be Carey Price's if they choose to go that route. So he's obviously there. I like to look at the current players on this roster and I like to look at the effect that they have. I do think that Shea Weber will get in on kind of a not a courtesy, but like you can't not, right? So Shea Weber is going to be one of those was going to be one of those players. I think it will be really contentious with PK Subban, but I do think he had a major impact on this franchise, and I do think he deserves to be considered. Jose Theodore in his time was probably one of the only players on this team who could play, and I think one of the most important ones is Thomas Plekanec, Andre Markov, and Thomas Plekanec. So I was only going to give you two or three, but Thomas Plekanec is definitely going to be there. And Andre Markov, there's no question he has to be there. PK Subban's a question mark. And then, Carey Price is a shoe-in. Saku Koivu is obviously the first guy. Brendan Gallagher, I would love to see him win a cup. But even if he doesn't, I think that he will be one of those people that is honored like that. And as for the rest of the players that are on the roster right now, I think it's really exciting to think that one of those guys could be in a conversation. 20 years from now, we might be saying, like, that guy's going to get into this Canadiens Hall of Fame, or that guy deserves to have his number retired. I don't know if that's coming. And it's also going to be interesting to see, what happens if this group of players brings a cup back to Montreal. Does that solidify, let's say, Nick Suzuki's chance? I don't know. May get him into the Hall of Fame, but I don't know because it's still so early in their careers. And while they have potential, I don't think that anyone other than Ivan Demidov is considered to be a big name. Even Juraj Slavkovsky, who was picked first overall, I don't see them having a name like let's say a Cale Makar or anything like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see a guy like Ivan Demidov, Lane Hudson, who's broken records already, Nick Suzuki, who could be the person that captains this team back to the Stanley Cup. And if they win multiple Stanley Cups, forget about it, right? In today's era, you win multiple Stanley Cups in a short amount of time. That's, you just need two for people to start asking questions about whether or not you're a dynasty. So I think it's really like a really, really fun conversation to have. And I'm really interested to see what happens, 20 years from now, when we know if this rebuild when we know worked, or when we know if it didn't work, when we know if they've had an impact on the game, and even if they didn't bring home a cup. I'm rambling at this point. I feel like it's it's a really, really interesting conversation. I really want people to think about that, and send us their answers. And you can leave those answers in our YouTube comments. You can also send them to us, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also contact us on Bluesky. We're Locked On Canadiens on there. You can contact us on TikTok. We're Locked On Canadiens on there. We're also Locked On Canadiens on Instagram. You can send us DMs on any of those platforms. You can @reply us. You can leave them in the comments of any of our reels that we put on there, or any of the content we put on there. We just love hearing from you guys. And we want to make sure that you understand that this is your mailbag. I do really quickly want to remind everyone that Ian will be back tomorrow. And tomorrow he will be technically back tomorrow, but we're not recording until Monday night. And he'll be back all next week. And then we're going to go up to 3 episodes a week. On the week of September 8th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm really hoping that the golf tournament happens fairly soon. I think they usually do it on a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I've been scouring the internet for any clues, and I have not found any. And I'm trying very, very, very hard not to ask the one person that I think could know. I don't want to abuse that person's my connection to that person. So I'm keeping quiet for now. But if that person is listening, please send me the date of the Habs golf tournament, because I want to be ready for all of the quotes and all of the videos the Canadiens are going to post of the Habs in golf carts doing silly content. We have a ton more mailbag questions coming up, and that's up next. I'm going to start with a question from Jess O. Hi there. During TV timeouts, Sam Montembeault often skates over to the bench, stands facing away from the team, and looks ahead stoically. Guaranteed that he is not. But if he were, what song is Sam humming to himself during these TV timeouts? Now, I thought about this, and he probably has some sort of Quebec bluegrassy pop. You know the ones I'm talking about. If you're from here, you know what I'm talking about. Like a Quebecois band that sounds a bit like bluegrass, but it's Quebec pop. That kind of band in his head, right? That's the kind of guy he feels like to me. But I think he's also just really silly. Um, and when I say really silly, I mean like he doesn't take himself too seriously, right? So for whatever reason, the song by Billy Joel is in my head, and um it's oh my god, it's that song, "We Didn't Start the Fire." I really hope that's by Billy Joel. If it's not, please correct me because I could swear like "We Didn't Start the Fire" is by Billy Joel. Anyways, that's a song that's going on in his head, like at 90 miles an hour. So that's the question from Jesso. Thank you. I love like questions like this because it really makes us kind of write fanfic about our favorite team. Good friend of the show, Adam Yu. Mailbag question. I watched an episode of the Buffalo Sabres version of the show, that's Locked On Sabres, and they've been doing a series where each episode gives an update and looks at how the team stacks up against division rivals. Would you consider doing something similar on Locked On Canadiens? Adam, ask and you shall receive. There's still plenty of preseason to go, and we are going up to 5 episodes a week coming September 8th. Again, most likely. That's the latest that we've heard. So there will definitely be a side-by-side comparison of the division rivals. I tried to do a little bit of a division standings yesterday. People got mad because I didn't name the person who posted that thing that made everyone mad. I just didn't want to name him because I didn't want everybody going to pile on him if they hadn't already. I don't want to be that person. We can all just ignore that lazy attempt at crapping on the Montreal Canadiens. But Adam, we will definitely do our division rival series coming up in the coming weeks, and we still haven't done. So what we need to do is we need to do our Nick Suzuki season review. We never did that, and we're coming up on the golf tournament. We have to make sure we do it before the Canadiens report for physicals, I think, and they're all coming back to town, so it's coming up soon. So Ian and I will probably do our Nick Suzuki review very early next week. All right, that was a lot of conversation from me. We've got a question from Bluesky from Matt C. Are you cool with Fix You by Coldplay still being the opening day anthem for the Habs? Not only is it 20 years old, it's about grieving the death of a loved one. And if you agree it's time to switch tunes, what's your suggestion? So I think with things like this, there's a very strong emotional connection. And I think that it's important for Montreal to refresh sometimes. But I think the problem is there hasn't been a suitable alternative. So when there is a suitable alternative, because this is what people associate, that feeling, when we all hear that song on the radio or anywhere it's playing, we think of the Montreal Canadiens coming out with those two, with the two little kids with the flags and the ice on fire and all of that. It evokes a very emotional reaction. So until there is a song out there where the production team for the Montreal Canadiens hears that and goes, that is it, the fans are going to have a similar emotion connection to this. They're not going to replace it. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I just associate it with the Canadiens at this point. I really do. So I think in the absence of something that really does fit, if they change it just to change it and be fresh, everyone is going to be annoyed. 100%. Like people are just going to complain about them bringing it back, right? Think about the goal songs, right? Every time they tried to change the goal song, everybody wanted it back, and we still have it now, right? So it has to be something that truly fits the Montreal Canadiens, and I think they're probably, the marketing team is probably looking for it, because I agree with you, it is pretty old at this point. It also does not really have anything to do with the feelings that they're trying to evoke. But if you guys have any ideas as to what should be the song, let us know. We've got a couple of questions as well from our good friend Bill Van V. So, Bill sent us an email a couple of weeks ago, and I did not know this, but Bill is a podcaster. And so I do want to say this, not just to Bill, but to anyone else out there who does have their own podcast. But also, if you are a Habs blogger, if you are a prolific Redditor that everyone knows, if you also have a Habs YouTube channel, reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to check out your work and really get to know you guys, obviously. So, Bill, this is officially your invitation to appear on the show. So, Bill has two podcasts where I believe the Land of the Creeps is now not one of your podcasts. It's a podcast about horror. And your current podcast, and I want to get this right because the order is important. It's called Music, Movies, Sports, and Stuff. So I tried to look for it without remembering the name the other day. I simply could not find it. I have had a chance to listen to it now, and I will say one thing is it's very clear from the podcast, Bill, you are a dad, but that's awesome. It's very nerdy. We love it. Please, let us know if any of you guys, not just Bill, all you guys, you got a podcast, you got a blog, you got a YouTube channel, let us know. And if you're comfortable with being on camera, maybe we can have a crossover episode, or you can be a guest on the show. Let us know. Bill, this invitation is open to you, obviously. And we can talk. We have to talk Habs. We can't talk about music, movies, sports, and stuff. It has to be about the Habs, or at the very least, hockey. Anyway, so Bill asked us a question, and I just remembered now. Help us promote you, or just have a great conversation, right? So, how much input does the Habs front office have with Laval and Trois-Rivières? I realize they'll hire coaches that fit their philosophy, but how much autonomy do the minor league coaches have? Does front office dictate who to play or who to play more, strategy in terms of game to game philosophy, player acquisition, team discipline, or etc.? How much is Big Brother watching them? So I asked around about this, not just about the Habs, just in general. There are some NHL teams that are extremely hands-on with their AHL teams, and then there are some that prefer to give them a lot of autonomy, but not necessarily dictate things like ice time. They don't do that. What they do is they have conversations, right? Like they have people scouting every minor league game from the organization, right? Reporting back up. A lot of the NHL teams will have specifically a general manager in charge of that AHL team, just to kind of split up the duties. And autonomy is really important. And they'll say things like, let's say, we want this guy to work on his discipline, or, something that this person is trying to, if they want to crack the lineup, they need to work on this kind of thing. So with that in mind, the people in that AHL team developing and coaching those players will work with them, right? But at the end of the day, it is up to, they don't make the coaching decisions. It is up to the AHL coach who gets how much ice time. It is up to the AHL coach for discipline and things like back skating, things like that. They obviously keep in touch with the players too, right? To give them their assignments at the end of the season, to say what they want to work on, all of that kind of stuff. But my understanding is that they maintain a respectful distance, but keep their interests known. And there's a lot of opportunities like in training camp and things like that for the AHL players to spend time with the NHL players, the development people, all of that. Marie-Philippe Poulain and Vincent Lecavalier coming in, all of that kind of stuff. Like they do have a lot of contact, but once it's time for the season, it's that your job is to win games. Your job is to do your best to win games and make players better. That's it. That's my understanding. And then again, there's other teams where they're super hands-on. I don't know how that dynamic works. I feel like that's micromanaging. With Trois-Rivières, there's a little bit more autonomy, right? I think they're affiliated and there's conversations, but my understanding is it's not like they're not dictating, they're not sticking their nose in it really. They're just keeping an eye and seeing how things go. That is my understanding. So this is also from Bill. This is a different question. As an organization, the Habs currently are far from the Flying Frenchmen. Yes, Montembeault, Carrier, and Bolduc are from Quebec, and Blais as well, but far from fan phase and a marketing sense. Do you think the organization, be it scouting, drafting, or trades waivers, feel the pressure to acquire French-Canadian players to get the home crowd going? I know ultimately talent and winning will get fannies in the seats, but I am willing to bet there's a yearning for a star Frenchman a la Lafleur, Domfus, or even a Patrice Brisebois. Thoughts, opinions. I was very mean to Patrice Bisbra, is all I'm going to say about that. I think in an ideal situation, they would have somebody who's a homegrown player who's leading the Canadians to winning, right? Whether it is somebody who is one of your top three forwards, whether it is someone who's one of your top three defensemen, whether it is your goaltender, right? You never know. Samuel Montembeault might be that guy. I don't know if he would be the guy in the way that Carey Price was, but he could backstop this team to a long run. But I think at the end of the day, the time when the Montreal Canadiens had those star players, they also had first dibs. They had the rights to the Quebec players. We don't have that anymore. And the other thing too is that we talked about this a little while ago, and I do want to bring on maybe somebody who has a little bit more expertise, but it's harder now to get players that are homegrown. I'm going to say high in the drafting order. That's the way I'm going to put it. That's the nicest way I'm going to put it. I don't want to get into any kind of political stuff, especially with not a super 100% clear understanding of why things are not better here. We talked about, Samuel Montembeault being the last Quebec goaltender, for Devin Levi, all of that. We've already talked about that, but I do want to bring someone on who's in the know, who knows a little bit more about how hockey works here and how the minor leagues work here, and just why we are the way we are. Because if there were more French Canadian or Quebecois players or homegrown players, whatever we want to call them, all throughout that top round, that first round, then the chances of the Canadians landing somebody would be great. But as it is now, I do think that it falls to the guys like Carrier, to Bolduc, to Montembeault, to kind of, David Savard was one of them, to be the marketing faces, whether or not they want to. All right. Really quickly, I'm going to run through the last couple of questions from our good friend Brent D. And the questions are, of the current roster, who is the most likely to be the next Marty St. Louis down the road after Marty has won a few cups, of course? I think it's really funny and interesting if it would be really funny and interesting if it was Lane Hudson. The reason that I say that is, yes, we don't hear a lot from him, but I don't know anyone on this roster who lives, breathes, and just dies with hockey like Lane Hudson does. All he does is hockey. He doesn't do even his partner is a hockey player. Literally all he wants to do is play hockey. All he cares about is hockey. And so that reminds me a lot of the Martin St. Louis. No, it's not the short person or whatever. He's also really smart about on ice stuff, right? So he's the most likely, in my mind. But I think if it comes to leadership qualities and the ability to inspire and speak to people, I think that's going to end up being Nick Suzuki. So those are my two questions. I love how your question is, after Marty has won a few cups. Yes, here. Some cups here, not elsewhere. Next question. If you were not hosting a Habs or hockey podcast, what kind of podcast would you be interested in hosting? And or what would your dream non-podcasting job be? So if I was not Habs podcast host, I think I would host a podcast about movies. And it would be about heist movies. This is actually a project I've tried to get off the ground a couple of times with a really good friend of mine, and life just keeps getting in the way. So we would talk about heist movies. That would be our podcast. We even had a logo. We had a graphic designer create something. We were talking about rights to an intro and outro song. And I think it was before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. And then ironically, that even made it harder because we were working 24/7, et cetera, et cetera. So it just never got off the ground, also because I have this job too. So, and then my dream non-podcasting job would be travel writer, not travel content creator, travel writer, because a travel content creator has to be on all the time. Your literal life is creating content. Whereas a travel writer, yes, they do have to write the content, but they can actually experience and live and immerse themselves in those travel experiences. Anyone who knows me knows I love to travel a lot, as much as I can. That would be my dream job. My favorite one, though, is he had a suggestion for Ian. If Ian is back on holiday at the time of answering this question, I'm putting him down for hosting pub trivia nights. That's a really good one. But Ian has a lot of other interests. He actually has a podcast it's a podcast that reviews episodes of a show about food, and now I can't remember it. I'll make sure that we talk about it next week. And then this final one may be best for a solo Laura week, which is today. Which bagel is the best? Fairmount, St. Viateur, Henri Bourassa, Other Montreal, or New York bagel? And what is the best way to eat a bagel? E.g., is it plain, toasted, buttered, cream cheese, etc.? Brent's answers are to Q3 or St. Viateur if fresh baked that morning, Henri Bourassa for freezing, and remember to slice the bagel before freezing it for easy toasting, and for toppings, margarine with a bit of spicy red salsa. Not kidding. Okay, so first of all, you are wrong. It is Fairmount. The best bagel in Montreal is Fairmount. It is not St. Viateur. But there's room for any kind of bagel in my heart as a Montrealer. Henri Bourassa is actually a really good call, and they also have good naan bread. Or good naan. Sorry. When I say naan bread, I always hear in my head like I'm saying bread. They have good naan. Bagel Henri Bourassa has great naan. I do order naan bread from them. Naan from them. Oh my God. I keep saying it. Anyways, St. Viateur has its place, but Fairmount is the top of my heart. But one that you did not mention that I really think deserves an honorable mention. So if you live in Montreal, check them out. If you come to Montreal, if you're staying anywhere near the downtown or Old Port area, you will have access. It's called Fabrique de Bagel de Montréal. And they are delicious. They definitely have like interesting flavors with cream cheese and with their bagels, but they are delicious. Like they're not like a St. Viateur or Fairmount, which is like a classic, but they are really yummy. I definitely encourage you to check them out. The one in the Simons Mall is my favorite location. They're delicious. They're amazing. They've got tons of cool stuff, and it's a treat. So finally, with the toppings, I'm a cream cheese girl, and there's a place nearby that I found that does a cream, like they make their own, they mix their own cream cheeses, right? So like you'll get like a jalapeno cream cheese or a dill pickle cream cheese, or things like that, strawberry cream cheese. And I really like a dill pickle cream cheese. Actually, I believe some of the places I mentioned also have dill pickle or jalapeno cream cheeses, but that's my favorite topping. It's like a homemade or whatever, they home mix the cream cheese with fun stuff in them. There's also a maple bacon one. I'm not a super sweet and salty person, but definitely check that out. All right. I have gone way over time. You guys have sent so many amazing questions. Please remember, we talked about if you have a blog, tell us about it. If you have a Habs podcast, tell us about it. If you have a Habs YouTube channel, tell us about it. If you have suggestions for people that we should have on the show, please let us know. And we want to make sure we have a lot of guests this upcoming season. There's a lot to talk about. We want to talk to you. We want to hear from you. And if you're just starting out, we want to promote you. If you're a longtime podcaster, like it seems Bill is, we just want to chat. We want to have a fun chat. Also, Blaine, if you're listening, please come on the show again. I really have a bunch of exercise questions for you that I've been saving for your next appearance. In the meantime, please make sure you are subscribed to this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We'll be going back to 5 days a week very soon. You can find us all over social media. We're on Bluesky. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. And we're at Gmail. All of them are Locked On Canadiens. So please get in touch with there. Send us mailbag questions. Send us suggestions. Like I said, tell us if you have a podcast. We can check it out. Yes, you will find me all over social media at The Active Stick. You will find my co-host Ian at Maybe It's Ian. And I have one final note for you guys because we have a really cool thing going on right now. And it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Tall of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. I want to thank all of you so much for listening, and I will see you along with my co-host on Tuesday.